Okay, so we have a few questions for you about eating disorders, depression, and anxiety.
Okay.
The first one is, what do you think is one of the main contenders to depression and anxiety?
I think that a little bit of it is genetic. I think, for me in my personal life, I have depression and anxiety on both sides, my mom and my dad's side, and my grandparents and everything. And so I think a little bit of it is that. I also, all of the interviews, I guess, are going to say this part, but my mom used to tell me in the grocery store, like, don't run away from me or somebody's going to kidnap you. And so I spent like my entire childhood like praying every night that I wasn't going to be kidnapped. And also the news, like my parents watched the news every evening when I was growing up. And so there was like John Benet Ramsey and Elizabeth Smart when I was growing up. They were both kidnapped and one of them was killed. And so then my brain, I was too young to know that, but I was knowing it. And so then I was constantly afraid that was going to happen to me. So being overexposed to news that we're too young to understand and like to process through. And then lastly, I really do feel that social media has a lot to do with it. I have social media. I'm not sitting here saying don't have it, but I think just being mindful of what you're looking at on social media, and if that's contributing to you feeling bad about yourself, then unfollow those accounts. Because maybe there's a certain person that you look at and they make you really mad, and it's like, okay, let's just unfollow them. Like, I don't have to follow this person, because when they make me mad, then I feel bad that I'm so angry, and so that kind of thing.
Okay. You want to ask the next question?
How do you think mental illness is affecting society?
A lot. I think it's always affected society a lot. I think that people judge mental illness. I think that, so there's mental health issues and there's mental illness, and I think people feel that those are the same, and they're not. So you have people who have very, very serious mental health issues that you cannot be a functioning member of society with those mental illnesses, basically. And then you have mental health problems like depression and anxiety, and sometimes those can spiral all the way to mental illness, but they don't have to. But I feel that it's, in some ways, people are becoming more aware of it, and so it's good because people are like, hey, this is a real issue and we need to talk about it. But in some ways, I think everybody's like, oh, I need mental health days and I need a break and I need all of this, and it's like, no, we have to learn to function with it. So it affects society a lot. I just can't really even put into words how much. So.
How do you think depression is linked to eating disorders? Do you think that they're kind of with each other, or they're totally separate things?
I do. I think they're with each other. I think that an eating disorder is, first off, it's not just starvation. It's not just bulimia where you cause yourself to vomit. There is an eating disorder of just binge eating where you just like eat so much, and then just overeating. Like, so for me as a child, my eating disorder, I had an eating disorder growing up, and it was just that I ate everything. I ate everything all the time. Like, but it's a control thing. And so I feel like when we feel out of control of our emotions or our environment, that can include anxiety, because it's like, I'm very aware that I should not be worried about this. I know that worrying about this isn't going to change anything, but I can't help that I'm worrying about it, or I can't help that I'm really sad and depressed. But what I can control is my food intake. What I can control is how much I eat or how much I don't eat. And so when we feel completely, and as teenagers, so often you guys feel like you have, or preteens, y'all have very little control over your lives because, well, your parents are kind of in charge of you, or your guardians. And so I think an eating disorder is very much linked with depression, either because you're looking at other people and wishing that your body looked the way their body looked, and you're sad and you're not satisfied with your body, so you're trying to make your body do that, or you just feel like you don't have control anywhere else, so you're controlling your food consumption. And I definitely need to just like say here that all of our bodies are so different that I know people who have had anorexia or bulimia, and their body type is never ever going to be as thin as certain people. Like your bones, I don't want to just say big bone, but some people's bones are literally just bigger and they're not going to be that way. So, all right.
Next question.
How do you think eating disorders affect the person struggling with it?
So much. So that is like multi-tiered, that question. So there's obviously the feeling of, there's this low-key feeling of, why isn't anyone noticing? Maybe they notice that you're losing weight, but they're not, even your own parents or the people who live with you aren't noticing that, like, hey, I haven't eaten in 3 days. Like, why aren't they noticing that? And so then what people don't realize is that's making you even more depressed, because then you're feeling like you're invisible. So there's that. It affects them that way, but it also affects them as far as your muscle tone goes away, and so you're weaker, you're more irritable, and you're more tired, and your hair can fall out. You can have a lot of dental issues, not just from so bulimia is when you vomit, and so that can cause a lot of esophagus issues and teeth issues, but it also just not eating can do a lot to your bones and your bone density and things like that. But I have experienced an eating disorder, like I said, as a child, but then I had my weight loss surgery and I lost 200 pounds really fast. And so when I look in the mirror, I see myself as 200 pounds heavier than I am. I know what size I wear, I know what size I used to wear, but no matter what, I don't see myself how I used to look. And that's what an eating disorder is. Like, you really do look in the mirror and you don't see yourself right. It's called body dysmorphia. And so don't just think that people are doing it for attention, or that they're doing it and they can control it. It's hard. It's very hard. It's very mentally daunting, and it is a very big struggle. And so if anyone is dealing with this, please talk to me and I will try to get you help, because it's very dangerous for your body, especially if you're involved in sports in general, but if you're involved in sports, it can really hurt you. So.
Okay, and then our last question for you is, how do you think we can reduce the rate of eating disorders and just help these people if there's a certain way?
I don't know about reducing the rate of eating disorders, because my grandmother had an eating disorder starting when she was 9, and that was in like the 40s or 50s. So this is before social media. This is before TV was really a huge thing. But there were mirrors and there were other humans, and so she even compared herself then. And so I don't know, like, I would love to be like, well, quit comparing yourself on social media or quit looking at other people, but that's kind of hard to do. That's our normal thing, is to compare. But I think a way that we can start talking about it more and bringing awareness to it is just acknowledging that we've struggled with eating disorders and like talking about it, and even saying like, hey, I'm not talking about this to get attention. I'm talking about this because it was a really big struggle. This is the negative impact it had on me. This is what I've learned about it. This is how I'm overcoming it, and just helping other people. Eating disorders are so much more common than anyone thinks, especially for females, but males have eating disorders, major eating disorders. Males have major body image issues. They're underweight or they're not muscular enough and things like that. I've had to start talking to the football coaches and basketball coaches about not emphasizing weight so much with the male athletes, because sometimes it's beyond your control. So the boys, they're supposed to gain weight. They need to gain weight. They need to gain muscle. And so they're being told to eat and eat and eat, where the girls are like, I need to eat like a salad. And no. Anyway. So I think just talking about it, just kind of normalizing it and that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, these are all our questions. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. I'm KB, mental health specialist.